Security isn't a luxury, it's a strategy. Welcome to Prepping for the Urban Woman, where I empower you to take command over your future. From solo apartment living to managing a household in a crisis, I provide the roadmap for practical, urban-focused emergency readiness. While this is geared toward the ladies, the mission is universal: total preparedness for everyone. Hi, I'm the Urban Lady Prepper. Yes, I'm a real person. The first episode of my podcast was back on May 29th of 2024. And here we are almost 2 years later, and this is my 100th episode. 100 episodes. Just saying it out loud feels a bit surreal. When I started Urban Lady Prepper, I was just a woman trying to find her footing in a world that felt increasingly unpredictable. I wanted to create a space for single moms and solo women who didn't fit the typical doomsday prepper mold. I wanted to talk about real-life preparedness, the kind that helps you handle a power outage or a job loss, not just a zombie apocalypse. Fast forward through a website crash that wiped out my history and a major move to Substack, and here I am. Since any podcast and making it past 7 episodes is an achievement, I decided to do something that absolutely terrifies me: record my podcast as a video with me in it, not just audio. It does 2 things. It gives you the face behind the voice, and it also dispels those pesky AI rumblings. Just as I said in my newsletter this week, and it's free, you can sign up in the description below. The way to tell that you're looking at a real person and not an AI avatar is whether or not they can move normally and if they can hold 3 fingers in front of their face without things glitching and getting weird. I'm totally real. Believe me, if I were to make an AI avatar of myself, this whole thing would be completely different. Anyway, if you've been following my journey, you know I prefer being behind the microphone or the keyboard, banging out articles and the newsletter. Stepping in front of a camera is a different beast entirely, but growth happens in the uncomfortable zones. So I want to give a shout out to all those lady creators out there being their authentic selves without apology. So just as I'm asking my lady listeners to be brave when it comes to preparedness, that message would resonate even better if I were being my authentic self too by putting my face out there along with my written words. So what can you expect? For me to be my awkward, spastic, rubbery face self. These first few vids won't be great, but just as many of you stuck it out from the beginning as I worked to improve the audio of my podcast, I hope you'll stick with me until I get the video where it needs to be. I didn't start Urban Lady Prepper to be internet famous or do thirst traps, so this is a big adjustment, and there's going to be a learning curve. Now, let's get to why you listen to me in the first place: prepping for the urban woman. We have all been through a lot since 2024, from my first blog and episode of Prepping 101 to last week's episode about shelter mistakes. Today is about looking back for those new to my work and looking forward for those who are worried about what's going to happen next. And that should be everybody. Since I've been revisiting my 2024 posts to move into Substack, I realized that perhaps my website crashing out wasn't the worst thing in the world. Like many preppers without a huge platform, I often feel like I'm screaming into the void. And many preppers, regardless of where they're at as far as reach, tend to move away from the beginner's content. Maybe because their followers aren't newbies, or perhaps they believe if you haven't started out when they did, it's too late for you. Yes, most of the things I wrote about since 2024 have come to pass, and you would be in a much better position if you'd started then rather than now. But, as the saying goes, better late than never. And if your goal is to be better prepared in this dreadful timeline, it's better to get started than to never do anything. So, here are the 10 things that I would tell a new prepper. Number 1, preparedness is a mindset, not a shopping list. Most people think prepping starts with a trip to the store. They're wrong. If you go out and buy $1,000 worth of freeze-dried food today, you haven't actually started, you just spent money. True readiness doesn't start in your pantry or your hall closet. It starts between your ears. The 2 most crucial shifts you have to make before you buy a single can of beans are moving from this is a hobby to this is a necessity born out of care. Then it's the responsibility shift, accepting that when the lights go out or the water stops, the cavalry is spread thin. You are your own first responder. I used to think I needed every gadget. Now that I know adaptability is the best tool in my kit, I'm better off. Number 2, financial prepping. Having a disaster fund is more practical than a gas mask. I kept telling myself that I didn't have a few bucks to spare every week to set aside. But when an emergency happened, I would torture myself over the things I bought that I didn't need. I wish I had prioritized saving what little I could when I could have. Don't have that regret. Stash every $5 bill you get. Use that automatic savings features your bank may offer, and don't touch it. Next thing you know, when you need some extra cash for something important, there'll be more money in that stash than you expected. And be mindful that you don't overspend for preparedness. I won't lie, I went into debt going into prepping because I saw what was on the horizon. I don't recommend that. Please don't make that mistake. Be mindful of your money. You can live your regular life and be able to access the preps you need, and that's what I'm here to help you do. Number 3, apartment prepping for a small home is a unique challenge, but you don't need a 20-acre homestead to be prepared. Use your vertical space, multi-purpose tools, using your creativity. Those are your best friends. And more things are becoming available for those who want to grow food and store in small spaces. Don't give up before you begin because you think you don't have the space. You may have to make some design choices as you make room for your preps, but as I have written on one of my t-shirts, my design style is prepper because you can't eat feng shui. Number 4, skills outweigh stuff. Knowing how to fix a leak or start a fire is better than owning the most expensive gear you don't know how to use. It goes without saying that YouTube is an absolute lifesaver when it comes to learning skills for free that could come in very useful. Everything that I talk about on here, I can guarantee you there's at least 100 videos that show you how to use it, make it, or store it, whether it's DIY things that can be a substitute for a pricey item, gardening hacks, storage hacks, it's all on there. You just have to commit to making time to learn the particular skill you feel would be most important to you. Even if that means skipping an episode of that TV show about things and people that aren't even real. Now, before I continue, help out a small creator like me. It costs nothing to like, follow, or subscribe, and it's even better when you share the information that I'm providing. So please take a moment to hit those buttons for me as it helps me grow and reach more people. Also, I do have an ebook out, Urban Ready, The Essential Guide to Safety, Security, and Self-Reliance for Solo Women and Single Moms. I still have it on sale, and I'll provide a link in the description. Thanks. Okay, moving on to perfection is the enemy of readiness. It's better to have a good enough kit today than a perfect kit 3 years from now. Don't fall into the trap of not putting together that bug-out bag because you don't have everything you want or think you need in it. Build it as you go and as you can. You may find that the thing you thought you needed to make the kit worth building isn't what you ended up using. You will also find that the preps required for someone living in Alaska is going to be different than those folks living in Florida. Your preps will continue to evolve as your needs, your budget, your lifestyle, and your location changes. Number 6, community is your greatest asset. You can't do it all alone. Building a network of like-minded women is more important than having 100 cans of beans, especially if you have kids. I realize that in the city, we have a tendency to mind our own business, keep our heads down, avoid eye contact, all of those kinds of things. But when I speak of community, you have to understand that just as you are your first responder, your neighbors are also your first responders. They may be the ones who actually call the first responders for you. So it's important to understand that you're not looking to build a fan club, get into anyone's business, or have them get into yours, but at least be at a point where you understand what folks do, how you can help each other, who has certain skills. And this way, when something happens, you kind of know where everyone stands and what they're capable of. The time to do this is before a disaster, so you know who you can trust with your kids and what the latest updated information and resources are, where they're available, because you have those local connections. Number 7, mental health is a prep. Resilience starts in the mind. If you're panicking or can't keep your cool, your gear won't save you. One of the early posts and episodes I had was straight talk about being self-aware and having the mental strength to walk through life and run your household while keeping your emotions under control. This has just been reposted on my Substack, Your Daily Life is Your Disaster Rehearsal, or listen to the podcast episode, Get Your Mind Right, Prioritize to Survive. It was my 4th episode ever, recorded on June 9th, 2024, so forgive the audio quality. I've also mentioned that I'm a practicing Stoic, which is a philosophy, not a religion. That will help you be the master of your emotions. As a latchkey kid, box cutter carrying Gen Xer from New York, I appreciated the attitude adjustment. And realized how lucky I was not to have gotten jumped, or worse, because of my short temper and my big mouth. And never forget self-care. That's going to be number 7. Being able to reset is super important. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You can't make the best decisions if you're burned out. Number 8, your why matters. While you're prepping, sometimes you wonder why you're doing it, and it can be very frustrating. But if you remember that you're doing it for your friends and family, that helps. And that if you're prepping, you're able to take control, and it will feel a lot less scary. And now, as things are getting increasingly out of reach, it's easy to feel defeated, not ready, and hopeless. And that's part of their plan. However, now that you've realized preparedness is important and it's going to better insulate you against whatever this crazy future holds, it empowers you. This time in our history, as women, we are increasingly under fire for existing and wanting control over our lives and bodies. So we have to actively choose the mindset and things that empower us, no matter how hard they're trying to disempower us. Number 9, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Situational awareness is a skill that needs constant practice. If you live in an urban area, you've probably developed that skill more than those who live in the suburbs or rural areas. But you still need to stay aware. And with folks being kidnapped off the streets, with human trafficking more prevalent than ever, of people of all types, men and women, you can't let your guard down. You don't need to be a ninja. You don't need to be Liam Neeson. You just have to make the commitment to be aware of your surroundings and not be buried in your phone, not reading the room, or going into a place, or worse, staying in a place when all of your alarm bells are screaming. As women, we are raised to be polite, but in this day and age, it can be dangerous. Since no response guarantees our safety, you have to commit to doing whatever it takes to ensure your safety or get to safety. And if that means being rude, if it means not getting in that elevator, remember that the person who wants to hurt you doesn't deserve your courtesy. And any man who realizes the situations that women face every day should have the emotional intelligence to not be offended if something they do or say is taken the wrong way. Number 10, celebrate the small wins. Every new skill learned and every extra gallon of water stored is a victory. Preparedness is a marathon, not a sprint. It doesn't take an extreme event to make you realize that whatever preparations you've made up to that point have made a difference. It could be that power outage that lasted for 24 hours and you had enough water and backup resources to get through it without breaking a sweat. It could be losing your job and being out of work for a month and still being able to eat like you always have because you had enough food stored. It could be saving $5 a week for a year and then something happens to your car and you reach into that bin and you see that you have enough money to pay that expense. I believe that prepping is the ultimate self-care for a woman because when you have to be your own hero, it's what makes the difference between surviving and suffering. Looking back at those first articles and episodes, I see a woman who was determined but perhaps a bit more fearful. Today, as I flow through the newer ones and my podcast episodes to date, I feel more empowered. That is the goal of Urban Lady Prepper, to move from fear to confidence. If you're just getting started in prepping or feeling stuck in your preparedness journey, just remember that we take it one step at a time. 1 gallon of water, one extra bag of rice, and one podcast episode at a time. The world has changed, and we've changed with it. If you feel better prepared to face whatever happens next, I hope that the information I provided was a part of that. If there are any topics you would like me to cover that I haven't to date, let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to make an episode of it or address it in one of my articles. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there. Until next time, this is the Urban Lady Prepper signing off.